I never thought I'd be sitting here, spilling all this out like some kind of confession. But honestly, I'm still trying to process what I found out. My name's David, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 8 years now. We met in college, had a pretty decent life, good jobs, a house, friends, the usual. But over the last year, I started noticing little things. She'd get strangely defensive whenever I asked about her phone, or she'd suddenly be super busy and unavailable when I needed her. Nothing concrete, just enough to set off my gut feeling that something was off. I tried to brush it aside, telling myself I was just being paranoid, but deep down I knew better. Then came the night of the fundraising gala. It was a big deal for my political campaign, a chance to finally get some real traction. Lisa was supposed to be there with me, but I had a sneaking suspicion she wasn't exactly supportive of my ambitions. Still, I didn't think much about it at first. The night started off fine. I was giving my speech, feeling proud, hoping this would be the moment everything changed. For my campaign, that's when I noticed her, not just in the crowd but acting weird. She kept whispering to some guy I didn't recognize, a tall guy with slick back hair and a smirk that didn't sit right with me. I saw her lean in, whisper something that made him chuckle, and then she slipped away from the crowd. I thought maybe she just needed air, so I kept going with my speech. But then I saw her head straight for the venue's coat check room. My stomach tightened. It was strange because she's not exactly the type to disappear during a public event without telling me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I decided to stay focused on my speech, but I kept glancing toward the coat check door. Suddenly, the security guard stepped out, looking flustered and a little annoyed. I caught his eye and asked what was going on. He looked around and leaned in, whispering low enough so only I could hear. "There's someone in the coat check room with your wife, doing things I shouldn't see." My heart skipped a beat. I told him to hold on and approach the door quietly, my mind racing. You won't believe what I saw when I finally peeked inside. Lisa, my wife, was in there, pressed up against some guy, clearly fooling around. His hand was on her thigh and she was laughing like they thought they were being clever. But what hit me hardest was the way she looked, so confident, so betrayed. She wasn't just fooling around. She was cheating on me with one of my biggest donors, a guy who's been promising me support for months. While I was giving my speech up front, she was in that coat check room fucking him. That's when I knew my life as I knew it was over. I stood there, frozen, staring at the door like some idiot. My mind was spinning, trying to process what I'd just seen. My wife, Lisa, the woman I loved, trusted, built a life with, was cheating on me right in front of my eyes. With some guy who's been showering us with donations and promises of support, all while I was on stage trying to rally for the campaign. It was like a punch in the gut, but worse. I felt heat rising, a mixture of rage and heartbreak I couldn't quite control. I backed away quietly, not wanting to be caught spying. My pulse was pounding so hard I thought the entire room would hear it. I needed a plan, but honestly I was just numb. I knew I couldn't just confront her there. I had to think, had to come up with the right move. So I waited, watching from the shadows, trying to figure out my next step. I was furious, betrayed, and hurt all at once, but mostly I was stunned that she'd do this during my big night, right in front of everyone. The fact she thought she could get away with it, that she was so confident she wouldn't be caught. That just made my blood boil. I slipped out of the hall quietly, pretending to head to the restroom, but really I just needed to get away. My mind kept replaying everything I saw. Her laugh, his hand on her thigh, the way she looked like she owned that moment. I knew I couldn't let her get away with it, not without some kind of retaliation. The question was how? How do you respond when the person you trust the most has just shattered that trust in the most public, humiliating way possible? After a few minutes of walking around in a daze, I found myself outside the venue, behind the building. I lit a cigarette, even though I don't usually smoke, just to keep my hands busy. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed to do it carefully. It wasn't just about catching her, it was about making her feel the weight of what she'd done. Because this wasn't just some fling, this was her betraying me in the worst possible way, and I was damn well going to make sure she paid for it. As I stood there trying to calm down, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen, it was her. My heart sank even further. I hesitated for a second, then answered. Her voice was sweet, fake, trying to sound innocent. "David, I was just talking to some of the donors trying to secure additional funding. You know how I am, always working behind the scenes." I could hear the fake cheerfulness in her tone, but I wasn't buying it, not anymore. I told her I knew what she was doing, that I saw her. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then she started lying, of course. "You're overreacting. I wasn't doing anything. I was just talking, I swear." But I already saw her in that room. There was no denying it. Her words, her lies, they sounded so hollow. I knew she'd spin whatever story she could to twist her way out of this. She always did. But this time I wasn't going to let her. That night I realized that my world was changing forever. The woman I thought I knew was nothing like the person in that coat check room. And somehow I had to find a way to deal with it, to confront her, to accept what I'd seen, and to figure out if this marriage was salvageable or if I was better off walking away for good. The pain was raw, and I knew it was only going to get worse before it got any better. But I also knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this without consequences. The next morning I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My head was pounding and everything seemed surreal. That night replayed over and over in my mind. Her laughing, the way she touched that guy, the fact she thought she could get away with it during my speech. It wasn't just betrayal, it was outright insult. I kept asking myself how I could have missed the signs, how I didn't see this coming, and most of all, how I was supposed to face her now. I knew I needed to talk to her face to face, but I also knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to blow up without a plan, but I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I decided to give her a few hours to come home, to give her a chance to come clean or at least prepare herself. But I knew better. She wasn't going to confess willingly. Lisa's the kind that always lies her way out of things, even when she knows she's caught. That's just her style: deny, lie, twist everything around. I'd seen it before. When she finally walked through the door around noon, she looked tense, like she'd been crying but trying to hide it. She threw on her typical "I'm innocent" smile, but I could see right through it. I didn't waste time. I asked her straight out, "Did you sleep with him at the coat check room during the campaign speech I was giving?" Her eyes widened and she immediately started with the bullshit. "David, you're overreacting. I wasn't doing anything. I was just talking to donors, trying to boost our funding. You have no proof, you're just jumping to conclusions." That's when I lost it. I told her I saw her with my own eyes, that security guard confirmed it. I told her I wasn't some naive fool anymore, that I knew she'd been lying for months about her little business trips, late nights, and working late. I told her I saw her in that room, laughing and touching him like she owned that moment. Her face turned red and she started crying, but the tears didn't make her any less of a bitch. She kept insisting she was innocent, that I was just paranoid, that she was tired of my accusations. I could feel the rage boiling inside me. How could she lie so easily, so effortlessly? It was like she thought she was untouchable, that I'd never find out the truth. I told her I wasn't going to accept her excuses anymore, that I knew she'd been screwing around with him for months, maybe longer. It was clear she didn't want to admit it, but I also saw the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. She knew she'd crossed a line, and she knew I knew. I told her I was done playing games, that I wanted her out of the house, that I wanted a divorce. She started screaming, calling me crazy, saying I was making a big deal out of nothing, that I was just jealous because I couldn't keep her satisfied, that she deserved better than a guy who was caught up in his campaign. But I didn't care about her excuses anymore. All I felt was a deep, burning hurt and a desire for revenge. If she thought she could cheat on me and walk away without consequences, she was dead wrong. I had no idea what I was going to do next, but I knew I wouldn't let her get away with this. I spent the rest of the day trying to calm down, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw her in that coat check room, her face lit with that smug, knowing smile. I realized then that this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about the betrayal of everything I thought I knew about her. And I knew from that moment on, my life was never going to be the same. I had to figure out how to handle this, how to get even, how to make her regret everything she'd done. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that when someone cheats on you, the worst thing you can do is just let it go. The days that followed were a blur of anger, confusion, and a lot of sleepless nights. I kept replaying everything in my head, her lies, the way she looked in that coat check room, her stupid excuses. I felt like I'd been punched repeatedly, each new lie she told digging the wound deeper. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't want to do anything reckless. Still, every time I saw her face, I felt this burning desire to make her pay, to show her she couldn't just cheat and walk away like it was nothing. I started digging, trying to find out more about the guy she was with, what he was like, how long this had been going on. Turns out she'd been seeing him for months. She made it clear she was bored, that I wasn't satisfying her anymore, that she needed more excitement. More excitement? Are you kidding me? That bastard was just a tool and she played him like a fiddle. I realized she'd been lying about everything, her nights away, her work trips, even her little fundraising meetings. All bullshit. She'd been sneaking around behind my back and I didn't even have a clue. One night, I finally reached my breaking point. I decided I was done waiting for her to come clean or to admit anything at all. I wanted to see her reaction when she realized I knew everything. I set a trap, called her pretending I forgot my wallet, asked her to bring some papers she'd left at home. When she got home, I had everything set up. I had hidden a small camera in the living room, pointed directly at the door. I knew she'd try to lie her way out of it, but I wanted proof. I wanted her to see I wasn't some idiot anymore. She came in acting normal, trying to act innocent. But as soon as she walked into the room, I pressed play on the footage I'd recorded earlier. There she was, on camera, sneaking out of the house, then in the coat check room, kissing and groping that guy like she had no shame. Her face froze. The color drained from her cheeks. She stammered, trying to deny it, but the video said it all. I saw her, in her own words, betraying me, lying to my face. That moment hit me like a freight train. All the anger, the heartbreak, the humiliation, it all came rushing out. I looked at her, eyes cold as ice. I told her she was done lying, done cheating, done pretending she cared. I told her that I was done being the fool, the doormat. Her tears didn't matter anymore. Her apologies were just noise. I knew I had to get out, to get away from her, but part of me still wanted to punish her, to make her understand what it felt like to be betrayed, to lose everything. I told her she had one last chance to come clean before I made a decision. She broke down, finally admitted it all, how she'd been craving excitement, how she'd hooked up with him at every opportunity. She begged me to forgive her, said she was sorry and that she'd stop, that she loved me. But I didn't buy it. Love, please. All I could think about was how she'd played me, used me, and how I'd been blind for so long. That night I realized that no matter how much I wanted to believe she'd change, I couldn't trust her anymore. Trust was dead. I made my decision then and there. I was going to leave her, not just for my own peace, but because I didn't want to live with someone who thought she could get away with fucking around behind my back. I knew I had to do it soon, before I completely lost my shit. But I also knew this wasn't going to be easy. Breakups never are, especially when there's heartbreak mixed with betrayal. I was hurt, angry, and feeling more alone than I ever had. Still, I had to stand up for myself. I had to take back control of my life, even if it meant walking away from everything I'd ever known with her. After I finally gathered my thoughts and made up my mind, I knew I had to act fast. Leaving her wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about reclaiming my dignity and preventing her from manipulating her way out of everything, as she always did. I started packing my bags quietly, trying to keep my cool. Part of me wanted to scream at her, tell her how much I hated her, but I knew that wouldn't do any good. Better to keep things calm, at least on the surface. Inside, I was burning with rage and disappointment. The night I was set to leave was surreal. She kept begging, crying, pleading for another chance, saying she'd do anything to fix things. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I told her the truth, that I knew about everything, that I'd caught her in her lies, and that I was done. I remember her face twisting in a mix of anger and desperation as I packed my things. She kept telling me I was overreacting, that I was being paranoid, that she loved me, the same tired excuses she'd used 100 times before. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying to me for months, maybe years. When I finally told her I was leaving for good, she snapped. She started screaming, calling me every name in the book, trying to guilt-trip me into staying. "You're just jealous," she spat. You're insecure, you're crazy if you think I'd cheat on you. But none of that mattered. I'd already made my decision. I packed the last of my things, took a deep breath, and walked out the door. As I did, she lunged at me, begging for forgiveness, trying to grab my arm. I pushed her away and closed the door behind me. That was it. I was done. The following days were a mess. I felt numb most of the time, like I was walking through a fog. I kept thinking about how she'd betrayed me, how she'd lied from the start. But I also felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken control again. I spent some time staying with a friend, trying to piece my life back together. Every time I saw her face or heard her voice on the phone, I was reminded of how much I'd trusted her and how badly she'd hurt me. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I knew I had to move forward no matter how much it hurt. In the end, I learned some hard lessons. Never ignore your gut, especially when it's screaming at you that something's wrong. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. I also realized that revenge isn't about petty shit. It's about reclaiming your power, making sure the other person understands they can't manipulate or lie their way out of the consequences. I'm not proud of everything I did, but I do know I refuse to be a doormat anymore. That's the only way I could start healing. And honestly, I'm still working on that part. It's a long road, but I'm determined to get there. It's been a few weeks now since I left her, and honestly, the silence has been the loudest thing I've ever experienced. I don't miss the lies or the fake smiles she used to throw around, but I do miss the version of myself I was before all this happened. That guy who trusted blindly, who thought he had it all figured out. Now, every time I think about her, it's a mixture of anger and sadness. Anger that she could betray me so easily, and sadness because I lost someone I once loved. Looking back, I realized that I was naive in many ways. I let her get away with little things for too long because I wanted to believe in the best in her. But the truth is, she was never the person I thought she was. She was manipulative, selfish, and willing to ruin everything just for some fleeting excitement. It's a hard pill to swallow, admitting I was blind to the red flags, but I guess you only see clearly when it's too late. What I've learned from all this is that trust is precious, more precious than I ever gave it credit for. Once it's gone, it's almost impossible to get back, and the scars stay with you. I've also realized that revenge, in its own twisted way, can serve as a kind of catharsis. Seeing her squirm, knowing she was caught, made me feel powerful, even if it was just for a moment. But ultimately, I understand that true strength comes from walking away, from refusing to be victimized anymore. I'm still healing, still trying to put the pieces back together. I don't have all the answers, and I probably never will. But I do know I'm done with her in this chapter of my life. I hope someday I can forgive her, not for her sake, but for mine, so I can move on without bitterness. For now, I'm just trying to focus on myself, rebuild my confidence, and figure out what I want next. Betrayal hurts like hell, but it also teaches you who you really are. I've realized I deserve honesty and respect, and I won't settle for anything less. That's the hardest lesson I've learned, but perhaps the most important. No matter how much it sucks now, I'll come out of this stronger. And someday, I hope to look back and see this as the moment I finally took control of my life again.